Easy people, so here we are on part 2 of my mixing and mastering. It ain't easy because it isn't. It all depends on the genre, it depends on the material, it depends on what you want your audience to hear. It's about how whatever it is that you're trying to relay is relayed to your audience. One of the main reasons why I like the Akai Force, especially for this, is there's a few things what start to make sense, which sometimes are not that easy to kind of understand. So anyway, we've done the mixing, and as I said before, and I'll repeat again, the thing about mixing is you want to make sure you get all the levels down first, get all your levels so that they're not clipping, and get them to wherever they want to be. Make sure everything is how you want it to be before you take it to the next stage. This is an example of mastering. I'm trying to keep these really quick. As you've seen, it took me about, I don't know, just less than an hour to do the mixing of the tune. And now it's probably going to even be shorter to do the mastering. But as I'm stating, this is just kind of basic, so you can take what you learn from here and expand on that and start thinking about, well, what do I do for a specific element within my song? My key thing, I would say, as advice tips, so I'm going to give them now. One, what I just found out, T-Boy on my YouTube, shout out to him, is he told me that if you press hold on a insert, if you go here to any one of these empty slots and you press and hold, it automatically creates a channel strip, which is great. Another thing you might not be aware of, if you press hold slightly and then let go, that turns off the effect. So it means you don't have to go into there and go in and out. You can actually just press hold on different effects to turn them off and on. Okay, this is what we had. Okay, that was what it was initially, and this is going to be and what I'm going to play you now is what we're going to end up with finally. We did the mixing, and now the mastering should end up like this. I'm going to clear all of these elements and I'll take you through them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep these tracks. If you've been following along, you'll know what I've done. If you haven't, you need to go back to the first one to see what I've done. What I did is I mixed, and I'll get rid of all of this stuff. I'll get rid of the stuff which is not needed. So I'll actually kill them. So that, in fact, I'll just go there and I go trash. I'll keep the transient because that's what I had. Trash. And that one, trash. Okay, so the only thing I've done now is I've copied the track that I had, and I copied it 3 times. So 1, 2, 3, and that's the only thing. I'm not going to do that again because I did it. I've just copied them. So if you've been following along, that's what I did. I've just copied the track 1 3 times. Exactly the same, just copied him. So the next thing I'm going to do is I've named these just so that you don't have to do this, but I've named these just so it's easier. Low, mid and high. Now, there's one more thing I want to say before I continue on. I've just done this as an example by just using a drum program to do this. But I would suggest, even if you have an arrangement and you come down to mastering or anything like that, if you're going to export the stems, you should bring them stems back in and create a drum program, and I'll tell you why. Because if you create a drum program, you have 128 tracks already set there. Because if you go shift mixer, so I'll choose one, this one, and I've got a shift mixer, I've got a mixer inside of the mixer. So I would use that. That's me personally. And you've got more control and you can do all the things that you want and so on and so forth, as I've explained before. But that means you've got a mixer inside a mixer, and then you've got another mixer on top of that. So that means even though you might have 4 effects for each channel in that mixer, you've now got another 4 on top of that. And then you've got another 4 on top of that and another 4 on top of that. as effects go. So that gives you a lot of room for if you need to do any further processing. I've done 3 tracks there. I've copied the tracks 3 times. I've called them low, mid and high. And what I'm now going to create is my own personal multi-band compressor. So the first thing I'm going to do on this first one, what I'm calling low, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to go to EQ and I'm going to go and get a kill EQ. The reason why I'm going to get a kill EQ and what I like about them using a kill EQ, having a kill EQ on here, is it's separated into 3 bands. So if I tap that, I've got high, mid and low. So the only thing I want to concentrate on at the moment for this first one, what I've just named low, is the low band. So I can switch these off. Right, that's it. I'm going to leave that as is. I'm not going to shift any of those frequencies. The only thing I might do, and I will, is I'm just going to bring this down just 1.4 using the data dial, and I'm going to do that for each one as well. And the reason why is just in case if there's anything I'm doing, I don't want to add any extra to make it clip, so I just bring that down a little bit. So that's it. So I'm going to do that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click the last slot and I'm going to go here and I'm going to use a compressor. So now I've got an EQ going into a compressor. This is what's nice about the Akai Force, is I'm just going to go and use one of their presets, and because it's low, I want to bring out the bass. So I'm going to use bass and I'm going to use the classic. I could use the control. I'm going to see what the classic sounds like. So I'll put that in there. And I'm just going to play that one back. Oh, right, let me make sure that's better. So as you can probably tell now, that's just low frequencies, like really coming through. That's too loud for me, but I do like how it squashed the bass. It's more subby, so I'm going to bring that down. So, I don't know, probably about there. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, maybe a bit more. About there, that seems alright. Alright, so let's go to the number 2 then. So, come back out of here, I'll go kill EQ, get kill EQ, and now I just want to concentrate on the mid. That's it. I'll bring that down 4. That's it. And then again, get a compressor, add a compressor, and I'm going to use the presets. Now, what preset could I use? Well, it's the middle range. So what are the things in the middle range? Well, they're usually the instruments, and so I want to bring out the instruments. So I'm going to go to instrument, and I'm just going to go to control. That's it. I'm just going to press that, control, and I'm going to hear this. So I'm going to mute the bass one and I'm going to play the control. Play the mid. So that's nice. I think that's alright. I'm not going to do up to that. What I could do actually is have a bit more attack. So that's more punchy. So let me just explain this if you don't know what's going on here. What that is doing is it's waiting before the compressor comes in. So if you kind of release the attack, so if you make the attack a little slower, what it does is it compresses within a range of it compresses within a range. That is the easiest way I can explain it. You can hear it anyway. So if you're in any doubt of anything, you can hear it. So this is if I don't have that song. Listen to the snare. So that snare is more snappy. Listen to it if I just add the EQ. So you can see that's been brought up. And again, what's great is I can look at the out there and it's not clipping at all. It's not clipping at all. So let's go to the final one, which is the highs. So get me EQ by getting a kill EQ. Blam. And I'll turn off the low and the mid. And I'll do that again with that. Then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to go and get a compressor, which is not, that's a maximizer. So I'll delete that and do that again. Get a compressor. And I'm going to do the same thing. So because it's the top end of something, I'm going to go and get an instrument again. And it's just going to be control. I'm going to let that play and have a play around with it. So that's very snappy. Maybe I'm going to change the knee of this. And I'll bring it down a little. What I could do is I could bring a bit more of the original signal in. No, I won't. No, I won't. I don't need to. I don't need to. So, what am I not liking? I'm going to make that. That's better. I don't want it as snappy. No, I do. I want it a bit snappy. I don't know if you can hear this. I can hear this. But again, I've done that. So this is with it off. There's a little bit more snappiness to it. So I'm going to tell you another thing here, though. I'll tell you two things. You might be wondering, well, if all three of these are playing, wouldn't they be phasing and cutting out, cancelling each other out? And the simple answer to that is no, because I've isolated the frequencies. So the frequencies I'm working on are in that area. The mid is working in this mid area. The low's working in this low area. If I wanted to change where them frequencies happen, I have to change them on each one. So, for example, if I said, right, well, I want to EQ this area of this frequency. Well, I'll show you. I'll try and show you here. So this is where I say mixing mastering isn't necessarily easy, but there is some things what we can do. So, for example, this mid now, I could bring up any of that range in this middle area, right? But I don't want to touch the highs or anything like that because I'll be crossing over the boundaries of those frequencies. So in this mid area here, I could bring up this mid louder. I could shift a bit of it, kind of like a Q. I would advise not to mess with that. The only one I would mess with, if you want to, the only one I would mess with, because it won't do any harm, is the high. So if I go to the high, what I can do is, if I think the sound is a bit too dull, so I'll play this, I can move this frequency because I know as long as I don't go lower than 2 kilohertz, I'm not crossing over into the mid of this frequency. I'm not affecting the mid of the frequency. You can get more sophisticated. I've used a kill. You could use a paragraphic and then you could actually get a cue of that and actually mess with the frequencies that way. Again, horses for courses. We're just kind of doing the basics, but at the same time getting a really good sound. So, for example, in theory, I should be able to shift this frequency. Oh, good lord, I'm pressing the wrong one. Yeah, -2, right, -4. I could bring this up, right, and then I could turn up this frequency here. That I think would start to tire my ears. So I'd say maybe that. So this is with it off. Oh, good lord. I can't even do it that way. Let me think. I can't do it. Basically, you'll have to take my word for it. I've made this a little sharp. But in fact, look, if I turn this down, right? This is what it would be like. This is what it's like if I've added some. And you probably hear that piano there. That piano was more sharper down here. But if I move it up here, it's more of the top end of this. So now that piano is not spiking as much. So now I've got the low, the high, and the mids all together, right? So that's one thing. And the other thing I forgot to mention, because I'm trying to do this quickly at the same time, I forgot to mention what I did when I copied each three of these. I didn't send them out of the main outs. I sent them to a sub bus, and that sub mix summed them together. So I took this signal, this signal, this signal, and I sent them. I sent them here to a sub. So I sent them to this sub here. So I sent all those three signals out to just one here. And then the other thing what I've done, and I forgot to mention, so I'll start this stuff again because I totally forgot. So I'll get rid of these. Right. So I've sent all of those three signals now out of each track into a submix and let them combine together so that it's just one signal which is going out to the master. Right. Okay, hopefully that made sense. So what we have now is this. Let me make sure that's on mute. Yeah. Press play. So now I've got quite a chunky bassy sound. And then now I'm going to again process it some further. Because if I look at that, it's clipping. It's momentary. And it's that first bass, it's the attack on that first bass, what's making it do that. So what I'm going to do is I want to control that signal. So I'm going to go to effects and I'm going to just use a transient. I'm not going to use the transient on anything. I'm just going to use a transient as a limiter. So now, in theory, I might not even be able to need to turn it down. I'm probably going to turn it down one because I'm going to process it slightly more. So I'm probably going to turn it down just one. But this should now not clip. And it doesn't. And that's good. So that's cool, is what I was saying. That's a good mixed him up. So I'm going to turn that down just slightly. And then now the next thing what I want to do is I want to make because this kind of feels kind of a bit mono-y, and I want to widen it. So I'm going to go, not from here, I'm going to go to modulation, and I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to look for stereo width. There is some settings here. I don't know, I'm not convinced because they're doing a lot. And I should say something. I should have said this, and maybe I did, but I'll repeat it again. This is really basic what I'm doing here. If you've noticed, I could have added a lot of stereo width onto separate instruments in here. I could have added maximizers. I could have added gates. There's a lot I could do, but I'm kind of keeping it just quite simple and straightforward. So for example, with this stereo width, I could add the stereo width. Well, in theory, I could have added the stereo width to the things that I want to be wider. I couldn't add it to the high because I've took up all the channels. I've took up all the effects here. So for example, if I go back to this, I've run out of effects slots here, so I couldn't add a stereo width. I would have had to add it into another submix. But what I could do is I could have added it. I could have done this as a separate submix, and then done it there because I know they're all going to go to the master out. So the routing I could have done, I'm not doing that because again, I'm trying to make it all simple and kind of straightforward. But these are things you could do if you wanted to go further. I mean, you can really take this really to the hill if you want. I don't know, it might be overkill. Are we making London Philharmonic music? I don't know. If you're making something for the next Black Panther or the Avengers Return and you want to do that, then yeah, you could do that. You'd sit down and take time with it. Obviously, you wouldn't do this in 2 hours, would you? You'd do this over time. So anyway, back to what we're saying. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a simple stereo widener into here, into this chain. So yeah, there you go. So so the way I'm going to do it is I'm manually going to do this. So at the moment, if I press this is now just got whatever it is basic on it. You'll probably notice there's a difference. Maybe not. Right. So what I'm going to say is I want the top of this to be wider. Just a little bit. So that it's got a bit more of a spread. So I'm going to just do it a little bit. About there. You'll notice nothing's happening yet, and I'll tell you why nothing's happening yet. I want to make this, I think this is fine how it is. Maybe I'm going to narrow it a little bit. So, yeah, a bit more. So now, the width of this effect is not going to affect the lower frequencies as much. The mid, I'm going to bring up as well. I'll bring that up as well. So when I add this effect in, right, it's going to widen that by 120%. It's going to widen that by 110%. It's going to be more narrow on this by 80%. So if I do this, there should be no difference. You'll hear no difference. Now, the thing what makes the difference is the delay, because what it is it's a shift in the signals. So the signals are slightly out of phase. I think that's right. And that's what will give it that kind of wideness. So watch. You'll probably start to notice a spread. If I go fully, you'll start to notice it's wider. I wouldn't want it like that. I only want a slightness to it, so maybe that's nice. Yeah. So you can hear this is what it is now. This is without it. So hopefully you can notice that. I can clearly notice that, but obviously this is a tune I've been working with. So that's now got stereo width. Do you know what? I'll make it a little bit wider, more pronounced, and then you might really notice. Just on the top parts. Alright, so there's a lot going on there. Hopefully you notice that. And then the last piece, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a maximizer. So after I've done all of that, I can still process it more. Now the maximizer, I would use this way. Quite simple. I won't even explain it. I'll just use it like this. Just go to the maximizer and use mastering light. And the only 2 buttons you're interested in are here. And maybe the threshold, because the threshold, so I might as well explain it. The threshold, the lower that is, the more it crushes the sound, the louder everything kind of gets, is a simple way. The release is how quick it stops doing that. So the wider that is, the less that effect is affected. This is the thing what you want to be interested in for bass. At the moment, it's saying everything what it's going to try and do from 100k, it's going to center, and all the low frequencies, it's going to make them mono. Because I want it to use the subby, I just want more of the bass of it. I'm going to bring that down to about 80. So that's kind of lower than 100 hertz, which is around, I don't know, the kick or something like that. I can't remember. Anyway, I just bring it down low. The release, I'll do about here because I don't want it mad crushy sound. And then I might bring this threshold down just a little bit. I'll keep it up there, and then you'll hear what happens. Right, in fact, right, I'll do it like this, and you'll hear what happens. So I'm going to play it, and then you'll start to hear it gets kind of louder, and so on and so forth. So we'll start with the threshold. So nothing happens, and the reason why nothing's really happening, you might hear it starting to do a bit more after a certain degree, because you can see it's doing that. I would have it nowhere near that amount. I would probably have it, maybe we'll go here, maybe about 1.2. Now when I start to do the release, that'll start to probably come together, as you can probably see. I'll not say I'll be quiet. And then I want to center this, so this is with it on, this is with it off. Okay, so the last piece I'm going to do is I'm going to just check that is not clipping anywhere. And if it is, then I'm just going to use limiters. Well, first I'm going to see what it's like. So we've got bits of clipping here, but that's probably because I was talking and hitting stuff. So in theory, yeah, there's no issues there. So it's not clipping there. And like I said, it's because we're not clipping. If you look at here, that's fine. Great. So the next thing we'll go on to is the submix, right? And we'll set that again. So, right. So that's perfect. Cooking with gas. The second thing you'll notice, and I talked about this in the first part, was we wanted to get it in between that area so that the energy is in between the 9 and stuff like that. And I feel that we have done that. Yeah, we have. It's all around there, so that's around like probably -12, which is perfect. It's not clipping. That's perfect. So we know that signal is not clipping, so let's go to the master. And perfectly. Oh, there was one more thing I remember because I was yabbing. I've got the transient on there, so there is a limiter. So I'll switch that limiter off. Let's have a look now. And okay, so we've got some little artifact things. That could be because I'm talking. It could be anything. So I'm just going to put a little transient on there, just because that's nice. So, and I'll look at that, and it's just on naught, so that's fine. So that's fine, and there we go. So, and I'll show that volume. So I'll do that again. And that's how we got that. So here it is. Here it is. With just what we started with, I took off the maximizer when we first started, and this is what we had. I made a beat, I turned some volumes down, turned some volumes up how I wanted it. I stipulated that I like a bassy sound and I wanted it kind of bassy, and that was one of my primary things. I wanted the bass to stick out, the kick and the snare, a little same, but more about the bass kind of coming through. The other thing I did is took the maximizer off for this tune, and then started using compression. Sometimes not even having to use compression, it could just be filtering, but get rid of any bass that you don't need, because then it's not conflicting with any other frequencies. Same with mids and that lot, making sure of that. I didn't really go too heavy into EQing, because if I like a sound, I keep a sound. And then after that, copying it 3 times and just killing different frequency ranges and adding compression to those frequency ranges, which is like a little quick multiband compressor. Well, it's what a multiband compressor does if you use a multiband compressor right. And then for any loose notes, I add a limiter, which is in the transient, just to make sure if anything quickly went over, I'm just kind of controlling them. And then I put a stereo width into it to give it a bit more energy, and then a maximizer just to bring up the general sound a little bit. And that's what we had. So initially we had this, yeah, and as you can see, if let's say, just for the sake of it, I put this to 0, so that's already clipping there, it's already clipping. But let's just say we've put them to the equally to the same thing now. It's clipping and everything, and that's how that would sound. Let's go even a little bit further, and let's say put a maximizer on that. So, and I'll use a preset as well. All right, that's doing whatever it's doing. Yeah, it's doing whatever it's doing, but it definitely isn't this. Hopefully that's been helpful, and there's a few things you've gathered in there. That should sound decent in your headphones on the speakers. Please comment if it isn't. Do you know what I'll do? Before I quit, and I'm not going to edit, I'm just going to kind of leave this unless I've got more stuttering. If I've got some stuttering, then I'm going to edit that out. But I'm going to play it again. So I'm going to play the thingy, and I'm going to swap between both, and I'm going to stop talking so you can have a listen properly. What's going on here? So there's loads of ways you can do it. This is what's brilliant about this machine anyway. I've gone on more than I wanted to. I hope this has been really helpful. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Hit that like button, as I say, or smash it or whatever. Make it a cup of tea if you want. Right, so there we go. So hopefully that has been helpful. And until next time, as I always say, peace.